I'm Allison Langer.
I'm Xaire.
I'm Andrea Askowitz, and this is Writing Class Radio. You'll hear true personal stories and learn a little bit about how to write your own stories. Together, we produce this podcast, which is equal parts heart and art. By heart, we mean the truth in a story. By art, we mean the craft of writing. No matter what's going on in our lives, writing class is where we tell the truth. It's where we work out our shit. There's no place in the world like writing class, and we want to bring you in.
Hey, if you're new to Writing Class Radio, this is our second episode in a 10-part series inspired by the people I taught memoir writing in a men's prison. This series will bring you stories written by my former memoir students, as well as formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated people from around the United States. Their experience and voices, like those of many incarcerated people, are often marginalized and unheard. To help us get this right, we have Xaire, a poet, musician, and teaching artist who teaches writing and poetry in schools and juvenile detention facilities. Xaire will be our co-host this entire season, along with Andrea and me, giving feedback and commentary throughout the series. Xaire also lent us the theme music for this series. Xaire, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to say something before we continue. We want to be respectful of those who have been personally affected by violence. We don't mean to sensationalize crime or someone who breaks the law. Instead, we want to share stories. But we do want to challenge the criminal justice system because we think it isn't working. And we think people of color and people who are financially disenfranchised are unfairly targeted. And we believe that stories lead to understanding. If there's anything we need more right now, is understanding.
On episode 115, the first episode in this series, we went into detail about our motivation and hope for airing these stories. I told my story of meeting Too Tall and some of the other men you will hear from in this series. Please listen to that episode if you haven't already. Okay, so I'm excited about today's show because we're sharing one of my favorite stories by one of my favorite people, Clifton Jones, aka Too Tall. Before we get to Too Tall's story, we spoke to Chris Wilson, the author of The Master Plan, because Chris spent 16 years in prison. Chris was raised in Washington, D.C., where he grew up under extremely difficult circumstances. At the age of 17, he was sentenced to juvenile life without the possibility of parole. While imprisoned, he earned his high school diploma, graduated from multiple vocational shops, earned an Associate of Arts degree in sociology, and taught himself to speak and write in several languages. He now splits his time between Baltimore, Maryland, and New York City and works as a visual artist and a social justice advocate. Through his work, he investigates societal injustices, human relationships, and public policies. His artwork is collected and displayed internationally. He is also the founder of the Chris Wilson Foundation, which supports social entrepreneurs and prison education, including reentry and financial literacy for returning citizens, as well as art-related programs. Woo! Oh my God, this guy's busy. Damn!
I know, and he's so smart and cool. God.
Okay, Chris's book, The Master Plan, details his life before, during, and after the event that changed his life. So before I get to the interview, I want to make sure you check that out. We'll have links on our website because I love that book and I have gifted it to many people. Really, really well done.
So Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm just so curious. First of all, writing a book is just torture. But, you know, coming up with this master plan that you did in the headspace that is prison is crazy talented. I know that you wrote it when you came out, but the book itself, but the master plan is something that you came up with while you were there to help get you through. Will you briefly just tell us a little bit, tell our listeners what that is?
Absolutely. I went to prison. I was charged as an adult. I was a juvenile, so I caught my charge at 17, sentenced to natural life in prison. My first 2 years in prison, I fell into a very deep depression. So around the age of 19, I just said to myself, I said, I know I'm a good person. I got a good heart, and I know that I'm actually intelligent. I just never really applied myself. And I had lost everything. This was my rock bottom. And so I decided that this was the moment where I was going to prove to myself and to everyone else that my life was redeemable. And so I wrote up what I called my master plan, which was how I was going to educate myself, how I was going to embrace therapy. But it's kind of like a bucket list. I put stuff on there. I wanted to buy my dream car. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted financial independence. But most importantly, I wanted to be free again and return to the communities like the one I grew up in and just help people, be a positive example. And so it took me a very, very long time, but I was able to make it happen. And I'm still working the plan.
Well, wait, it took you a very long time to do what? To get from point A to point B?
One, it took me a long time to get out of prison. I served 16 and a half years in prison, and I've been free for 9 years. And since then, I've started companies. I've helped 279 people get jobs in Baltimore City. I, started companies and foundations and just been paying it forward. So I guess I would say that I'm proof that, people coming home from prison can turn their lives around, and I'm paying it forward by helping other people do it. So there's still things that I want to do, but the gist of the master plan, 97% of it is complete.
I have a question. What if somebody leaving prison doesn't have you? Like anybody like you? Where do they go? How do they make it?
So some of the things that I talk about in the back of the book are 33 things that you need to consider when creating your own master plan is developing a support system. So I have this, create your own personal board of advisors. So having a few people in your life who you can rely on. One of the biggest challenges for me when I came home from prison was having emotional support. So people that I can call and I was 32 years old when I came home. So even if it was like I was dating someone or it was like financial stuff, I just didn't know. And oftentimes people don't, when they come home from prison, they don't have this network and these resources where they can call someone and they can hold their hand and walk them through a situation. So I put that in place. And so that's what kind of helped me get on my feet. And to your question, I don't think there's like a really, well thought out reentry initiative for people that's coming home. You essentially just get cut loose from prison and are told to just figure it out.
This is always my biggest question is how did you stay hopeful when you were given a life sentence? And how does anyone stay hopeful?
It's a tough question. And I wasn't always hopeful, but usually I would surround myself with positive, optimistic people while incarcerated. And when I would go through those dark moments, which I think everyone does, they would encourage me to stay in the fight. And my friends specifically would tell me, like, you don't belong in prison, Chris, and you're going to get out one day and you're going to do awesome stuff. And so you got to get up tomorrow. You got to go back to school. You got to embrace the program because you got to be ready when your time comes. And I used to be like, I just don't know. It's been a few years. I haven't heard, I haven't seen many people get out. And my friends and even my especially my college professors and school teachers, they just would really push me to stay positive and optimistic. And it worked. My therapist also, too. My therapist would tell me just, that I was a good person. I didn't belong in prison, not for the rest of my life. I went to college when I was in. There was a pilot program and where we studied sociology. And so the professors would come in. They were really tough, too, by the way. They would scream at me and mark up my papers and say, you locked up and you don't have nothing but time. So there's no excuse for you to get anything wrong. So do it over. This is garbage. And I just be like, OK, all right. And I do it over and I do it over and I do it over. But I just got better. And I like being pushed. Maybe not screamed at all the time, but I don't mind being pushed.
Well, now that you're out and you encounter people who you've never met and that don't know you, how did you deal with returning with this prison stigma type situation? How do you overcome that?
It gave me incredible anxiety. Just think, because the thing was, I didn't want to lie to anyone, but it's just not something you can bring up. Let's just take just dating. You go on a first date and people are asking where'd you go to school at? Where'd you travel to and stuff? And you got this big, tricky gap on your resume, right? And you don't want to start off by lying. You want to be honest, but not too honest. And so it gave me so much anxiety, like my first year home. And so I wrote about this. I ended up doing kind of like a TED talk, but it was called Stoop Story, where you just go out on stage and it's like a few hundred people in the audience and you tell your story. You have to do it in 5 minutes or less. And I just decided to do it. And it aired on the radio and like the whole city had heard it, and they ended up embracing me. And after a while, they just knew. And what was warming and humbling about it was that people didn't see me as a bad person. They sympathized. They understood how someone like myself could end up in prison, and they just embraced me. And so it was something that I'm glad I did.
You came out big.
We talk about this all the time, that people want to keep their secrets to themselves. But the second you get it out there, they think everybody's going to hate them and reject them. And all people want to do is pull you close.
And here's one thing that I say to a lot of my mentees, and I used to say this when I was inside. It's one of those things that I learned through therapy, many, many years of therapy, 15 years plus of therapy, was everyone's going to want to know. If you've been to prison, people going to want to know, like, how'd you end up in prison? So you have to get comfortable talking about, like, what happened. And as we all know, sometimes the stories are horrible. It's crazy stuff, right? People make crazy decisions in their lives. But the second question is, what people should know, how are you different from the person who committed the act? Like, what have you done since then? What are you doing now? And like, what are your goals? And so it's the same as someone getting a job, say, I made a mistake and here's what happened. I was wrong. I paid my dues to society. While I was incarcerated, I embraced therapy. I went to school. I educated myself. When I graduated, I continued to educate myself. I stayed out of trouble. I'm home and I'm doing this. And my goals are these things. I want to be a pillar in my community. Here's the value that I add to your organization. Like, you need to like be confident and be able to explain that.
What you're describing is the journey of a reliable narrator in a story. But I want to ask you, how do you answer this question? Like, what did you do? I mean, is that completely not cool that I just said that?
I like this. And I always tell, I'll say this. Everyone, especially if you went to prison, you should always expect a question like this because everyone wants to know. So I'll do my best to be brief.
Or you can tell me to shut the fuck up. Okay.
I grew up in a tough neighborhood. My mom was dating a police officer, a crooked cop. Like, think of like Denzel Washington in Training Day, real charming, but just not a good person. He attacked us one day, knocked me unconscious. When I woke up, he was sexually assaulting my mother, and then he tried to kill her in front of me. She didn't die. He bashed her skull in. He lost his job. He got out of prison, started stalking the family. There was no law against stalking back then at the time. My brother ended up getting shot in front of the house. My cousin got shot in front of the house, too. My cousin passed away. I started carrying a gun. We started getting phone calls. One by one, we'll be taken out. They're going to catch us. They're going to kill us. We knew it was him. He would be sitting in front of the house. He broke into the house a couple of times, and we called the police. There was nothing we really can do. One night, I'm out in front of the house. 2 men started following me. And I go to a 7-Eleven gas station space because there was a lot of people. It was light. I had a gun on me, but I didn't want to use it. They surrounded me. They told me that they'd been watching me. They've been watching my family, that we shouldn't feel like that we safe. And then one guy tried to get behind me and get on me. And I fired my weapon and I ran in the opposite direction. I ended up taking that person's life. I was charged as an adult because I was a juvenile, but they charged me as an adult. And then I was sentenced to natural life in prison.
It's so fucked up. It's so fucked up. It's so hard to even listen to the story. I just get so angry.
I agree.
Brother.
It happens every day. And also, like, I have to accept responsibility for what I did. I did take a person's life. These people came after me, but I did make a decision, and I should have been punished. I was punished. I did my time, and I just tried to make the best use of my time.
Today's recording was done through the prison phone system. It's slightly muffly and a tiny bit hard to hear, but it was more important for Too Tall to get his voice on the series than to worry about perfect sound. We hope you'll be patient. And if you would like to follow along, we have put Too Tall's entire story in our show notes. After the break, you'll hear Too Tall read his story, The Making of My Unbreakable Promise.
We're back. This is Andrea Askowitz, and you're listening to Writing Class Radio. Up next is Too Tall reading his story, The Making of My Unbreakable Promise.
Hello, this is a prepaid call from an inmate at a Florida Department of Corrections institution. To accept this call, press 0.
Down on one knee, everything around me that had disappeared was muffled and seemed to be moving in slow motion. I felt like a block of ice drifting on a frozen lake. I was stunned. I didn't know how long I had been kneeling in the middle of my cell, but it felt like hours. I forced myself to stand and realized that I had been holding my breath. I composed myself enough to stop my hands from shaking. Looking down, I could see the words glowing, marking from the tablet on the floor. I roared into the darkness. It was after 11 p.m., so the cell lights were off. Guys were either sleeping or bundled up in sweaters or jackets in the day room, playing dominoes, talking shit, or watching a late-night movie on Bounce. My roommate was among the TV watchers, so I had the cell door pulled closed with a towel over the cell window to block inquisitive eyes and signal to my roommate that I was busy. The one thing I feared the most had materialized. I had lost my queen. She was gone. I thought about the last phone conversation I had with her only days before. My mother had cried, and that was rare. I can count the times I've seen Miss Frances cry. Standing in Tower and 6th Street, Miss Frances was a true Amazon, and she wore it well. Both beauty and Amazon, my mother was understanding and caring, but she didn't play any games. On countless occasions, I can remember walking into our apartment in Brayton-Page Projects to find some unkept stranger, an old friend who had fallen on bad times or strung out on drugs. They would be at our smoke gray glass dinner table, eating a healthy plate of yellow rice, turkey necks, butter cornbread, and sweet peas, or leftover baked macaroni and cheese, barbecue chicken, and Hungry Jack biscuits. Everyone would be laughing and drinking and listening to Otis Gate or Barry White. Like clockwork, one of my 3 uncles would pop in to rile my mother up, calling her out by her childhood nickname. Hey, Tuckerhead, and then head straight to the kitchen. As soon as my mother heard the lid on one of her pots being removed, she screamed, "If you don't get out of my damn pot without washing your dirty ass hands, well, I know something." Miss Frances always said whatever was on her mind, so there was never much back talk. It was well known that my mother could cuss the clouds out of the sky when she was pissed off. She'd lay down the law on man, woman, and child if something didn't sit well with her, especially if it was in regards to me or those she cared for. When I was 8 years old, my mother's uncle and some friends of the family were having a small get-together. Cool in the Gang was booming through the speakers on the porch. All of us kids were playing Pac-Man on the Atari, eating apple annihilators, onion rings, and drinking blue cream knee-high sodas. I don't remember exactly what set it off, only that it was in regards to my cousin Jessica, who my mom adored. Sharon, my uncle's wife, had gotten a little too tipsy and did something to Jessica that my mom didn't agree with. A few curse words were exchanged, then out of nowhere, Sharon came crashing through the door like a scene from a Western bar fight. How could this lady be gone? If my young mind could have registered the real consequences of stepping through the back door of that KLC with a snub-nosed 38 jam into the small of my friend's back as he pretended to take out the trash, I would have run back to high school, basketball practice, or the recording studio with a new attitude and respect for what life was really about. I would have made a different decision if I could have foreseen that one night I would be kneeling in a cold, dark cell trying to process the message that said, my mother was dead, long before I could give her the keys to the house I promised to buy when I was 11 years old. Instead, the prospect of what I thought would be a few $1,000s to party with on my birthday led me to squander the experience of sharing the gift of life with a woman who'd given so much of herself. She never got the chance to see me be the person she knew I could be. So far, I had failed her and myself. There was no way I would allow the story of my life to end like this. Wherever great mothers go, I was going to make sure that she would be able to say, I told you you would do it, and rest proudly. In our last conversation, my mother got on the topic of how she wouldn't be here forever and what to do if something should happen to her. I brushed it off and tried to change the subject like always. And, woman, you're not going anywhere. This time she stayed serious and on topic. If I leave here, boy, won't you start acting crazy? Mom, no, listen to me. Her voice sticking by emotions. You do what you need to do to get your behind out of there. Promise me that if I leave here, you're going to get out of that place and live your life. Don't worry about me. I'll be with your sister, your grandfather, your auntie Cat, Angelo, and my mother. I got you, Mom. I promise. And I meant it. Looking around the dark cell, it felt strange that my mother really wasn't here anymore. It didn't feel real. With mixed emotions, I left the cell to call my mother's husband. Ron had been a part of our lives for over 20 years. We were cool, but it hadn't always been good. As a family, we shared a history littered with frayed love and struggles. I had witnessed him stand against anybody he deemed a threat to my mother. Yet, I remember going into a kitchen one night and grabbing a butcher knife because I heard him hit my mother. I was 11, and I never forgot this. I could hear the tears in his voice when he picked up the phone. I understood his hurt, his loss, and everything else that I can't formulate into words. Calming himself, he recanted the details that led up to him riding in the back of an ambulance with my mother before she passed, and her leaving the message telling me not to start acting up. Even in her final moments, she was more concerned about my well-being than her own. In a zone, I walked laps around the dorm listening to Tupac, Hold Your Head on my MP3 player. I had to stay focused and away from people. I knew I was one wrong word away from doing who knows what, but I also knew if I made good decisions, my time would come. In 1996, I was convicted of robbery with a firearm and 3 counts of kidnapping that I committed with 3 childhood friends when I was 18. And I was given 4 life sentences on my first criminal offense, while my 3 co-defendants were allowed to go free without serving a day. This left me with a sour taste in my mouth. And in crucial moments such as this, I get frustrated because I feel alone and betrayed. I just want to say fuck it. Then I remind myself that it's on me not to give up on my life, my dreams, to one day cross the stage at the Grammys amongst the greats and pay homage to the woman who rooted for me no matter what. Only now, circumstances had transformed my dream into an unbreakable promise. I stopped at Bob's cell and put my face to the glass, waved his hand in the darkness to let me know he was waiting. Stepping outside, he immediately asked what was wrong. Maybe it was the look on my face. I explained without going into detail what I was going through, and to stop me if I did anything I would regret. With time standing still, I continued to pace, think, and I knew without a doubt I would fulfill my promise to my mother. Miss Frances Andrew McNair.
The writing is really good. The making of my unbreakable promise, I'm so intrigued by that title. And I really was drawn into his descriptions of his mother. He had like this really well-rounded description of her as being like this Amazon, very caring, but played no games. Like, she was tough. I also thought it was really interesting that he calls her Miss Francis the whole time. That tells us something. I'm not sure what, but it's fascinating.
So I've been, in the creation of this, the original version. This part I wasn't. It's interesting how the story comes out, like when it's revised. I think we talk about this a lot. Sometimes the story starts off as one thing and you revise and it becomes something else. And I can't even remember the first version right now, but the sadness in this story, every time I read it, hear him tell it, it's like when I hear his voice, it just, the whole thing. So it's hard for me to comment in a very impartial way, because I just feel so sad that this guy is stuck in prison. He's missed his mom's funeral. He's missed so many things because of a mistake he made at 18. And I think he conveys that really, really well in this story, because we get the crime. We get that it was like the gun wasn't even loaded. They just needed some money, to party with, and it was a bad mistake. And he says, like, if he had to go back, he would never do that again, because now he realizes what he gave up for that one opportunity to go party. He's missed this whole family, his whole life with his mom, and now she's gone. So up until I think the time that she did pass, he was thinking, I'm going to get out. I mean, it was motivation. There's something there that was motivating him to really keep moving forward in this very stagnant place. And then once she died, that dream was gone, but he had a new dream to prove to her that he was going to get out. So there's something that is motivating him in a bigger way. And I love that about this story.
I think what speaks to that is a line that stuck out to me was when he's talking about his mother saying, if I leave here, don't act crazy. That reminds me of obviously something my mother says all the time. And something my grandmother even says is, dead people don't have wishes, but living people do, and the wishes don't die with them. I believe that really ties in the entire message of this whole piece is, his mother may be gone, but she still told him to do something. And it's not done until it's done.
I have a question for you, Xaire. It revolves around the mom character, the mom influence, the mom in his life, in your life. The moms get a very bad rap. The kid is in prison. Oh, the mom. Like he wasn't raised with a mom that was around. I found that not to be true from these guys' stories, that the mom 99% of the time was trying her hardest to really give her son, her kids, a better life, to be a great role model. And I was wondering how it was with you growing up, what you've seen as a Black son.
Yeah. So funny enough, actually yesterday, I just finished wrapping up on this play that I was in that is called The Happening Mixtape Volume 3, This Woman's Worth. The entire premise of the show was celebrating the Black woman and lifting up the Black woman. And my mother happened to be in attendance for yesterday's show, the final show. What really got me thinking about that was there's a line in one of the scenes, very talented actress, singer, songwriter, poet by the name of Xaire Jones. And she delivers the line so well. She says, sometimes I wish I didn't have to be a superhero. And it goes on to speak about how, it would be nice to be treated like the damsel in distress every once in a while. It'd be nice to sort of take a back seat and let other people do the work. But a lot of the time, the mothers in my community, they don't get that luxury. They don't get that opportunity. They have to be the strong one in the family. They have to be the leader. They have to be the superhero, because there's no one else to take up that role. Because a lot of the time, either the father may be either working extensively hard, not at the house a lot, because a lot of them come from low-income families, or they might be incarcerated, like we said earlier in the previous episode. A lot of these men, we're products of the argument of nature versus nurture. We're products of our environment, And because, Black men are incarcerated at a higher rate, a lot of them don't get to be there to raise their children. And their children see that, and that influences their decisions to the point where they end up in these same situations. So a lot of the onus and responsibility of raising the household falls solely on the shoulders of the Black mother.
Well, this story honors the narrator's mom.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. And like I said, I find that in most of the stories, these men really believe in their moms, and the moms are the ones showing up to visit, and the mom's sisters and, just the family, when they can, are very supportive. But like Xaire said, it's a product of the environment and the opportunities that they are not getting. And then we're pointing the finger and being like, oh, it's your fault. Well, it's really not. You can only do what you can do to get to the next level without any support or opportunities. And what we need to do is to be able to help provide more opportunities, to help break these cycles, to change, to elevate. And that's what's so important.
One thing I loved about this piece was just the attention to detail, from it opening up to, him talking about, feeling like he was floating on a block of ice in a frozen lake. Or the part that really stuck out to me was when he said it felt like, when he realized that it felt like he'd been holding his breath. That's something that happens with me a lot. I notice that every once in a while, I'll see the word breathe and then realize I'm not breathing, because we hold so much of that in. Everything that's going on, we hold it in so much that it just stops our breath for a moment, to the point where we have to release it. And then obviously, talking about being threatened when he was trying to sneak some food, hearing the lid crank and all that, listening to Kool and the Gang, Otis. These are all things that's this is an everyday thing for me. So it was really cool hearing that in this piece.
He's super into music. I mean, he wants to go into producing and all that stuff. That's his passion in life. And so I think it really comes through in this piece that he wants to walk across the stage at the Grammys and pay tribute to his mom. And I just can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah, he's going to win a Grammy.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait.
In the next episode in the series, you will meet Roderick Richardson and former prison doctor Karen Gedney. Thank you to Too Tall for sharing your story. And thank you, Chris Wilson, for coming on our show and telling us your story. And thank you for listening.
Writing Class Radio is produced by Allison Langer, Xaire, me, Andrea Askowitz, and Matt Kundle and Evan Serminski at the Sound Off Media Company. Music by Marnino Toussaint and Xaire. There's more Writing Class on our website, writingclassradio.com, including video classes, essays to study, and editing resources. If you love the lessons you get on each episode, you can get them all in one place on our 3-part video series for just $50. Click video classes on writingclassradio.com. If you want to be a part of the movement that helps people better understand each other through storytelling, follow us on Patreon and join. For $10 a month, I, Andrea, will answer all your publishing questions. For $25 a month, you can join Allison's First Draft weekly writers group, where you will write to a prompt and share what you wrote. First Draft meets every Tuesday from noon to 1 Eastern Time. Go to patreon.com/writingclassradio. A new episode will drop every other Wednesday.
There's no better way to understand ourselves and each other than by writing and sharing our stories. Everyone has a story. What's yours?
Produced and distributed by the Sound Off Media Company.